The Uzbek army's act of stealing chickens was purely a helpless act. What I got in exchange was an unexpected gain. A brief summary of the Uzbek army's recent month. A relatively typical achievement. First, destroy the Russian Tu-22 M3 bomber. Illinois, 76 transport aircraft. Then destroy the S-300. An S-400 air defense missile system. Landing ship etc. The last few days. It even destroyed a Russian submarine. Frigate. Although the latter was not completely scrapped. But according to the photos circulating on the internet, within 1 year, they will no longer appear in the Black Sea. In addition, over a long period of time, Russian military factories, explosions or fires continue to occur at the airport. Even special forces carrying Ukrainian flags also once landed on the Crimean Peninsula. In general, 3 months after the Great Counteroffensive in the summer, Uzbekistan's results finally started to shine. The first stage of chicken stealing tactics. Declare success. What is chicken stealing? The literal meaning can be understood. The thief and the chicken owner belong to two different representatives of strength. That is to say, when the thief cannot confront the chicken owner, it can only be done by stealing. Come and get this chicken. Take Ukraine for example. It has previously competed with Russia's military strength. Not a platform. The only way to get chickens is to steal them. This channel wants to explain something. If Ukraine's strength is greater than that of the Russian army, then it might be replaced by the Russian army to steal the chicken. Stealing here refers to disparity in strength and opposition in situation. Doesn't mean anything. Let's continue. Ukraine more than a month ago. Lots of chicken stealing tactics. That is, entering Russia quietly. Massively destroy targets. Does this tactic work? Of course it works. The Russian army's chickens have been stolen many times. Then naturally he will become angry. Lose your mind. Even self-defeating. The Ukrainian army will be defeated due to repeated attacks. Morale soared. If this situation continues to develop, what happens? I guess there's no need to say more. This is not just on September 16th. That is the first day before this program is published. Ukrainian army annihilates Russian 72nd Brigade. More than 4,000 people in total. During the battle on September 14th, Ukrainian troops from the south, north and west attack from 3 directions. Successfully suppressed the Russian army to the east of the railway. This is the 3rd time that Russian troops have abandoned Andriivka. Ukrainian troops enter the region for the 2nd time. Previously garrisoned at this place, it is composed of 4,000 Russian troops. 72nd Brigade of the Russian Federation. Now they no longer exist. Ukrainian officials call battle for liberation of Andriivka Operation Blitz. Within 2 days, the 3rd Brigade eliminated the enemy's brigade reconnaissance leader, 3 combat units, and nearly all of the remaining infantry of the 72nd Brigade. For Ukraine, this is a long-lost victory in conventional warfare. But few people know. Before that, supporting the tenacious resistance of Ukrainian soldiers, it's the one who successfully steals chickens again and again. From the past 3 months, judging from the overall front advance of the Ukrainian army, the result is actually very unsatisfactory. Whether it's NATO or Kiev, invest a lot of resources, experienced such great losses, only in exchange for the Russian army several villages near the first line of defense. Especially 2 months ago. Ukraine's land counteroffensive. The disadvantages are more obvious. Western tanks and other equipment. It did not allow the Ukrainian army to effectively break through the Russian army's defense line. Those Ukrainian troops trained in the West. New recruits without much battlefield experience. There was no large-scale coordination of arms. It's all done in teams. Most of the time it's on foot. In addition, the Uzbek army's advantages in drones are gradually balancing out. Russian electronic warfare interferes with the Ukrainian army's original combat methods. It also caused a major blow. The Ukrainian army during that period. It can be said that we face many obstacles. Not only has morale become low, there are even NATO countries begins to question military aid to Ukraine. Which country specifically? I won't mention it here. In short, whether it is the Ukrainian army or the Ukrainian government, have been in a downturn. Until the last month, the Ukrainian army has rekindled the strategy of asymmetric warfare. Launch high-frequency chicken stealing against Russian military targets. Everything returned to normal. Applications of various types of drones and unmanned boats. Participation in homemade or imported long-range strike weapons. NATO reconnaissance intelligence system support. These are the keys to the success of the Ukrainian army's chicken-stealing tactics. For example, Storm Shadow, a Scalp EG cruise missile aided by Britain and France. Range 300 kilometers. Ukraine's self-developed Neptune anti-ship missile. Range of up to 280 kilometers. These missiles can cover large areas of the Black Sea. Enough to threaten many targets in Crimea. NATO intelligence system. After discovering loopholes in the Russian army's defense, notify relevant information to the Ukrainian army. The Uzbek army will then use it as needed. Develop corresponding plans for stealing chickens, etc. From the results, the Ukrainian army's plan is still thorough and detailed. Especially penetration. Take the Russian bomber incident as an example. It is unlikely that Ukrainian drones will take off from their own country. Because drones not only fly slowly, and it's flying low. Can't find it. That's pure bullshit. So, Ukrainian drones. All with the participation of lurking personnel. Taking off from an area close to a Russian military base. Raid. Besides, attack on Russian S-300 anti-aircraft missile positions. The drones must have been flown first to induce and interfere. Then use the loitering bombs. Or the Neptune anti-ship missile is the final word. Before the attack on the Russian military shipyard, the Ukrainian army first dispatched 5 fighter planes in one go. 10 cruise missiles launched. The Russian army claimed to have intercepted 7 of them. But it still caused a landing ship in the dock. A submarine was damaged. That submarine is still Kilo class type 636.3, which was put into service in 2014. A typical new type of big baby. The Russian army responded to this. My heart must be bleeding. From the results, the Ukrainian army's tactics of lurking and stealing chickens. Very well executed. No one dares to say. The Russian army does not feel sorry for these losses at all. But what can he do? The Ukrainian army's chicken-stealing position. Generally not at the forefront, but in the rear area. The distance from the firefighting point is at least 1 to 200. As many as 6 to 700 kilometers. At this time, The Russian army can either use the same means to counterattack or take revenge by fighting on the front lines. The same method was used by the Russian army. But Ukraine's current air defense system and anti-aircraft missiles assisted by NATO already starting to work. Due to the frequent warnings in Kiev, NATO intelligence systems have been monitoring the skies over Ukraine. So, the Russian army wants to use the same method to deal with the Ukrainian army. Very difficult. In addition, the strike efficiency of the Russian army's long-range weapons is also not obvious. It may be that the Ukrainian army has no high-value targets to bomb. It may also be that the Russian army's long-range reconnaissance and observations are relatively ineffective. Since the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the Russian army did not pose a threat to the main transportation lines of the Ukrainian army. It's a fact. We won't give examples here. In short, it is not easy for the Russian army to use the same chicken stealing method to deal with the Ukrainian army. And Ukraine, not only by stealing chickens, improved the morale of the Ukrainian army in a short period of time. It also caused heavy losses to the Russian army. If the Russian army wants revenge, we can only work hard on the front line. Objectively speaking, it is said that Ukraine relies entirely on this tactic. Turn the tide. Not likely. This tactic. This is due to the disparity in strength between the two sides. The alternative play style spawned by. Just judging from the current battlefield situation, this asymmetric strategy. It is currently Ukraine's best choice against Russia. Be tough on the battlefield. Even with Western support, the size and number of the Ukrainian army cannot resist it. But using the chicken stealing tactic, Ukraine can achieve at least 4 effects. First, is to use long-range missiles to contain Crimea. Previously, the Ukrainian army moved south from Zaporizhia region. Advance on land blocked. Then remote attack is undoubtedly the best choice. Secondly, it's using this tactic. High frequency consumes the combat power of the Russian Black Sea Fleet in order to reduce its potential threat to Ukrainian offshore vessels. At the same time, it will reduce the Russian military's ability to supply Crimea by sea. Third, the Ukrainian army can take advantage of the chicken stealing tactic. Fighting a psychological war with Russia. Explain to the Russian people Putin's so-called special military action against Ukraine. It is wrong. Ahead of Russia's presidential election. Create political instability within Russia. Fourth, also the most important point. While advancing the above goals, use the chicken stealing tactic to distract the Russian army. Look for potential weak points on the land front that can be quickly counterattacked. It is clear. Ukraine has already achieved this goal. This great victory on land. It will undoubtedly give the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian government a shot in the arm. Next. Will the Ukrainian army choose to continue stealing chickens? Or should we take advantage of the victory on the ground and advance? This channel thinks. No matter what choice, you don't even need to stop stealing chickens. If the Russian army is occasionally stolen, that can only be said to be careless. But the problem is, the Russian army has repeatedly suffered losses in this regard. It shows that there is something wrong with him. The Ukrainian army dug a hole once. The Russian military will only fix the vulnerability once. And he only fixed that one loophole. It does not follow this analogy. Defend all. So that means, wouldn't Wujuan stab him like this? The subjective initiative of the Russian army. Can't find the problem at all. This is not deliberately intended to harm the Russian army, but a very obvious fact. This leaves the Ukrainian army with a large operational range. Like recently, the blow to Sevastopol. The Russian army will undoubtedly strengthen its defense in this area. But can't the Ukrainian army choose another direction next time? Sure. Under this vulnerability. Unlucky position. Maybe not the same one. But there will definitely be another one. So why should stealing chickens stop? At last. Give this an objective review. Today's program has ended. Stealing chicken tactics will not bring the war to an end. Or let one side win. But we can let the weaker party have the ability to counterattack at any time. To use a common saying, it is, you can take my life, but you can't take away my will to resist. Ukraine's chicken stealing tactics. It is the best embodiment of this fighting will. Ukrainians just don't accept it. What can Russia do to me?